don't recall him saying that, no.
You don't recall it?
No.
So it's possible he did say that? You just don't remember one way or another?
I do not remember him saying that.
And do you recall that he had a garage door opener to either a house or a condo or something like that of Miss Willis's?
I've never seen a garage door opener. I've never been to Miss Willis's house. I've never been to, and I'm trying to explain, I've never been, so no, I do not have any personal knowledge of him having a garage door opener.
Okay. Let me ask the question again.
Yes, ma'am.
I didn't ask if you had personal knowledge, like as in you saw it. Do you have any knowledge at all from Mr. Wade or any source that he had a garage door opener to access one of Miss Willis's residence?
And I'll object to any source as to hearsay.
All right, depends on the source. Overruled.
No, not, no, I don't have any knowledge.
So when you told me that, did you just make it up?
Do you have something that shows that I told you that?
Yes, well, we're going to go through all the texts we can, but so was that made up though?
But I'm going to object because I
I
don't.
don't recall him having,
Mr. Bradley, just
I'm
a
going to
second.
object under 106 as the rule of completeness. I don't have that text message or any text messages that indicate that, Your Honor.
And I don't have, if it was a text, we had that conversation. I actually think it was when he was on speakerphone and Mr. Merchant was there, but I'm not sure. But I mean, if I'm asked to qualify exactly where that's from, I would.
Okay, so rule of completeness would be if you need to introduce other text to show the context. If you're saying you haven't seen a copy yet, then I think Ms. Merchant needs to do that before you can
And I don't
decide
have,
the next step.
And that's what I was asking him. If that was something he just remembers making up. If he doesn't, then that's fine. But
She referenced text messages and started to go into her packet of papers.
Sure.
That have text
So you don't have a
messages.
text message to that?
I don't. I would need some time to look through, and I don't remember if I have a text to that or if it was during a conversation. It was one of those.
All right,
And
well,
I'm-
he has now said that he has no knowledge, so on to your next question.
Okay. Did Mr. Wade tell you about the trips that he and Miss Willis took?
no.
Do you have any knowledge of the trips that he and Miss Willis took?
Objection, hearsay.
Overruled.
I do now.
Okay. But you did not before this proceeding?
I did not know until you text that you found that in the deposition of his divorce. I mean, not deposition, but something from his divorce.
Okay. And when you responded, doesn't surprise me, they took many trips to Florida, Texas, California. Those are your words though, right?
I'm going to object as to relevance. He said
Sure.
he did not know and he actually learned from Ms. Merchant the information.
He said he learned about certain trips from Miss Merchant.
Okay, you can tie it down, but
Thank you.
we'll
He
see.
had no information about any trips that Ms. Willis and Mr. Wade took. That he learned it all from Ms. Merchant. That was his testimony.
Sure.
Judge, I'm
Maybe
allowed
the
to.
conclusion we reach. I think she's going to ask more than one question now. All right, Ms. Merchant.
And if, Judge, just so we can be clear, if he said more than one version, that's all relevant. We're allowed to talk about the different versions that he's told.
All right, I've overruled the
Thank
objection,
you.
Ms. Merchant.
Do you remember telling me that it didn't surprise you that they took the trips that I found in the divorce file because they took many trips to Florida, Texas, California? And then you told me that they took the trip to California when she moved her daughter there because she failed out of FAMU. Do you remember that?
I don't recall that, but if, I don't recall.
Okay. Judge, may I approach? It's
Sure. You may.
It's in one of the ones I gave you. Look at that and let me know if it refreshes your memory.
So when that,
Just first let me know if that refreshes your memory.
yes,
Okay.
yes.
So it's true that you told me that they took many trips to Florida, correct?
Per that, yes, but one of the messages is cut off, and you asked about some other trips, and I said, no, I didn't, I think. And that was specific to, at the top of that, it says, no, I didn't.
Yes.
And so that was to the trips that you asked me about. And I think before that, when you mentioned that you found all these trips, I think I said, oh, wow.
Yes, you did.
And
You did not know about all the trips that were taken, and you qualified it. You said, no, I didn't. When did it happen? And then the next text, which I can get, or you can look at your phone, or whatever refreshes your memory, you said was after you left, after the firm was dissolved,
I'm
correct?
gonna object to relevance.
Overruled.
It was after the firm, the trips that you said, no, you didn't know about. You told me those were after your firm had dissolved, correct?
I think you mentioned that they were after I left, maybe, or whenever you found them. And I said, no, I didn't know about those trips, so
So you believe I mentioned that it was after you left?
I'm quite sure you have the text message, and I will refresh my memory.
Is it easier for you to refresh your memory with your own phone or with my printouts of screenshots?
Well, you have the printout, so.
I know, but Judge, the reason I'm asking is because I'm getting objections that I've cut things off, and it's just the nature of how you have to print out screenshots. So in order to avoid that, I'm happy for him to refresh his memory with his own phone, if that would be,
Well, I don't know if he's accepting your offer or not, so you're.
would that be easier for you?
You can just provide the documents.
Okay. Let's see.
I have some water, Judge, please.
Yeah, let me see what we can do.
Sorry, Judge, I'm just trying to pull out all of the messages that you may need.
All right. Well, I don't really see, at some point, we're reaching the cumulative point where we don't need to go through an entire 6-month text chain. You're making the point that he'd made some comments to you along the way that led you to believe he had more knowledge than today he's testifying that he had. And so if you've hit the high points of that, then I don't know what else we can cover that actually moves the needle.
Okay, I'll move on to the actual trips then. So you told me that they took many trips to Florida. That refreshed your memory. You told me that. Was that based on your knowledge from Mr. Wade?
That would have been based on anything that my client would have told me. I didn't have personal knowledge of whether they went or not.
The trips to Texas, and you're the one that typed Texas. Was that based on your knowledge from Mr. Wade?
It would have been something that came from the client. I cannot tell you that I have any personal knowledge of any trip other than what would have been said by the client.
Obviously, I'm not asking if you went on these trips. I'm asking if you have knowledge from Mr. Wade. You also typed California. Was that something that you gained from knowledge from Mr. Wade?
It would have been from the client at this particular point. Yes, it would have been from the client.
And when you told me that the trip to California was to move her daughter out there, would that have been something you gained from Mr. Wade?
Thank you, Judge. Any knowledge that I have of any trip would have come from my client at the time.
You told us last week that Mr. Wade used your credit card one time. Do you know when that was?
I do not.
The relevance of why we're here today.
Well, I think this would be impeachment of Mr. Wade's testimony. If Mr. Wade testified that he had never used anyone else's credit card before.
I object to asked and answered because it was covered during the last year where he acknowledged that Mr. Wade used his credit card.
But I asked when.
Just
I did.
when, okay?
I didn't ask, did he? I asked, when did he?
Let's go there.
I do not have any dates of when Mr. Wade used my credit card. I testified that we used the card for business, and that throughout the business, we would order paper or supplies or filing of depositions. The cost factor of cases is what I said, and that still applies today. Did he use my credit card? He did, but I can't tell you who he used that card, what the trip was for. I can't even tell you at this time where he went.
But he used it for a trip.
Yeah, it was for a trip, but I can't tell you where, when, why, or anything to that nature. Correct.
And he paid you back in cash.
I never testified that he paid me back in cash. I said that he would either pay me back, I said I can remember. I do not recall. Sometimes he would write checks. Sometimes he would pay cash. And that still applies today, that I do not recall him paying me back cash, but I do recall him paying me back.
And this was when you were still, before your partnership split up, correct?
It would have been before I left the firm, yes. He wouldn't have used my card after I left the firm.
Okay. So we can at least narrow down the dates to that.
Before I left the firm, yes.
Okay, great. And Mr. Wade gave you details about meeting Miss Willis in Hateville or East Point, as it was called.
That's incorrect.
He did not tell you about that.
He didn't give me details.
He did not tell you about meeting with Miss Willis at an East Point or Hateville apartment?
At this time, I don't recall. No, I don't recall.
Where did you get that information from then?
He's testified he doesn't recall if he even had that information.
I asked if he got it from Mr. Wade, and he says he doesn't recall. So then I asked where he got it from.
I do not recall where I got the information from.
Okay. And you and Mr. Wade were friends as well as business partners, correct?
We were friends in the sense of I've known him for years. Yes, we were friends.
And you definitely did not want to come and be a witness in this case, correct?
That is correct.
And it was after, and we talked about this earlier, that Gabe Banks called you and then Nathan Wade called one of your friends. It was after that you hired Mr. Chopra to assist you in this matter, correct?
Was it after that? So I hired Mr. Chopra and I hired Mr. Graham. Now, Mr. Graham is here, and when I received the subpoena, Mr. Graham was here at the last hearing, but he also had to go out of town, but he was present. Mr. Graham, I called, and I had started getting calls from media, and I told him to respond to the media, I think, and that was somewhere around whenever you subpoenaed me. So it was, I can't tell you that it was that instance of those calls for Mr. Chopra, but I had engaged Mr. Chopra and Mr. Graham at that time.
Okay. I'm going to ask the question again because I didn't get an answer to it. After you got the phone call from Gabe Banks and from Nathan Wade to your
I think it was before that, but however, I think it was before that is what I'm stating.
when you got the call from Gabe Banks, you called me immediately. Well, actually, you texted me and then you called me.
I didn't call you immediately, but yes, we did speak.
Okay. And you texted me about it as well.
That is correct.
And then we spoke after Mr. Wade called your friend, and we talked about that as well, correct?
That is correct.
And at that point, you didn't mention anything to me about being represented by Mr. Chopra.
But I didn't mention anything about Mr. Chopra or, that is correct.
Yes, that was only my question. Let's see. I'm gonna show you two more texts. They're in the ones in the.
All right, Ms. Merchant, we're going to do
This is the
5 more
last
minutes.
two questions. Thank you.
3:05, I'm cutting you off.
Thank you. May I approach? I'm going to show you a couple texts to refresh your memory and then we'll ask you.
Are these supposed to go together?
No.
Oh, these are two separate dates?
Completely different dates.
Okay, all right.
So I know we talked about the other occasions where you said the text was just about the footnote, but do you recall me asking you, do you think it started before she hired him? And you said absolutely. You recall that?
I see that in the text message, yes.
Okay. And do you also recall me asking you how they would react if they would attack me? And you said no, they will deny it.
Your Honor, objection as to speculation as to how he thinks they will react.
I think that goes to the motivations of the witness. Overall.
And you told me that they will deny it.
That's written in there, yes.
I just want to, one last opportunity. You're an officer of the court, correct?
I am.
And you're under oath today?
I am.
Is there any of your testimony from today or the previous days that you want to correct?
That I want to correct?
Yes.
No, I've told you everything that I've answered everything that you asked.
Thank you. Oh, Judge, just so co-counsel and the state can have them, just for the record, I can admit those two there.
Well, they weren't ever tendered,
And
so it's just for,
I didn't know if they wanted
Right.
to use them, but I'll hold on to them.
if they need to be tendered at some point, then we can make them part of the record. All right, let me turn over to Mr. Sato, if you're with us on Zoom.
Thank you, Honor. I do have a few questions. First thing I'd like to know is whether the court reporter has defense exhibits 26 and 27 from the last.
We have a different court reporter this time. We had to have someone else fill in on such short notice, but I can potentially send those to you if you need them.
Well, I think I have working copies, but I want to make sure that the witness has a copy to look at.
All right, we can try to work through that logistical challenge. This is, you said 26 and 27?
I believe that's correct. And 26, I think, is the same text messages that Ms. Merchant was just asking about. It was 2 pages. I stapled it together, and it is dated January the 5th of this year.
All right. I can print off a copy now, but why don't we start off with the questions that you have?
Okay, because that's where I'm going to start, but I'll see what I can do to work through it.
Here, I'll lean on to you. Okay. All right, Mr. Sato, why don't we start with your question, and we'll see if you actually need to get a copy of those exhibits from the witness.
All right. Mr. Bradley,
Yes, I'm here.
all of a sudden I've lost you on the screen. There we go. Well, you're on the Zoom. You're on YouTube, but you're not on the Zoom itself. But not that I can see.
I'm here, I can hear you.
No, I know. I think his visuals may be a little different, so hold tight, Mr. Sadow. We could try to correct that. So that
Yeah, he was on when Ms. Merchant was asking questions.
we need to add,
They were sitting in here.
we need to add a spotlight to to the witness stand and a spotlight to Mr. Sadow, and we don't need all the other boxes.
There we go. Thank you very much.
Well, then hold tight, Mr. Sadow. We need to add you as well. All right, now we're ready.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Bradley, you have referred to Mr. Wade as your client, correct?
Correct.
You understand that the court has ruled that communications that you had with Mr. Wade are not privileged, correct?
No, I'm aware that the court ruled that one specific dealing with the time frame of one specific conversation wasn't privileged.
Then I'm going to ask Your Honor, if it's that the limitation, or
To clarify,
email.
sure, Mr. Sadow, you asked whether all communications with Mr. Wade, I think, were covered. That was not the extent of the ruling. The only ones that I deemed were not covered, and that I'd asked about in the camera hearing, because those are the ones that were relevant, were any communications Mr. Wade made regarding the existence or non-existence of a romantic relationship with Ms. Willis.
Fine, thank you, Your Honor. I understand. So, going back to this line of inquiry, when you say you don't have personal knowledge, what I want to ask you to start with is very simple. Did you have communications with Mr. Wade about the relationship between Mr. Wade and Ms. Willis? It's a simple yes and no.
Yes.
Okay. And is it your testimony that during the time you were representing him, which I understood started sometime in 2018, is that correct?
That's the time frame that I remember, yes.
Is it your testimony under oath that with regard to conversations with Mr. Wade about his relationship with Ms. Willis, that you only had one such conversation during the time you represented Mr. Wade?
One conversation of what? I apologize.
The only thing I'm asking about is that area that the court said is not privileged, which is the relationship between Mr. Wade and Ms. Willis. You've testified that during the time you represented Mr. Wade from 2018